My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to episode 296 of Legally Clueless. Thank you so much for rocking with the family. And if you are a newbie here, audio episodes like this go out every single Monday. We have another show called Midweek Teas that goes out on Wednesdays, and on Fridays we have another podcast show called Ask a Therapist. But back to this episode, this is what's coming up.
But if I didn't make it across the lake, because it was a very long journey at the time with the war, if I didn't make it across the lake, she'd bring me back to be buried. My mom tells me an interesting story about how it was a bit hard to find milk from lactating mothers at the time. There was a lot of lines and a lot of babies that had lost their parents. So the nursing homes were full of babies being nursed by only a few women. So what would happen is some of the male babies like me, they'd find cows that have just given birth. So we'd suckle right from there. That's intense, strong fresh calf milk that had a lot of nutrients. That's the kind of nutrients that was keeping a lot of us alive. They did some patchwork surgeries, so that's why the scars are still so vivid and visible. But my hand is fine. My face is fine. I'm completely fine. I mean, she was proposed to in 98, and the guy who she was marrying, who was coming to work with the UN in Kenya, he came with 5 kids. She had 3 of her own, now plus me. So like the 9-10 of us all now came and moved together to Kenya.
That is Benny. Oh my goodness. I can't wait for you to listen to part 1 of his story. I think this could be one of my favorite stories, but we'll get there a little later. Right now, though, I hope you're doing fantastic. I hope you're well as we inch closer to the festive season, the end of the year. And even more than like hoping you're doing well, I hope you're extending grace to yourself and just like ensuring you have time to rest, because September into November, December is when we have a lot of burnout because we've been pushing ourselves the whole year. So just be gentle with yourself. That's in case you needed that reminder. Speaking of reminders, we are still on our East Africa tour, and this week we are in Musanze, which is home not only to most of Rwanda's gorillas, but it's also home to Atanas. I just love her name, my goodness. And she's an inspiring scientist that we met in Musanze. Listen to this. I'm back in Musanze to meet Atanas, a brilliant Rwandese scientist teaching at Ines Ruhengeri University. First, I have to say, I haven't been in a lab since high school. So thank you for bringing me to one. I'm excited to see what happens here, what you get up to. I want to go to the very beginning. Is Musanze home, or where is home in Rwanda?
I'm from Southern Province in the Gisagara district.
Okay, and is that far from here?
It requires like 8 hours.
What?
Traveling from here, Musanze, to Gisagara district.
Well, how was life growing up? Tell me about your family.
I'm from a family of 8 children.
Are you the firstborn, or?
No, I'm fourth one.
Okay.
I'm the first girl in your family.
Okay.
Yes. And that's why I'm called Atanas. That's name of father. My father is Atanas. So as a first girl, I had to be called Atanas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And how is that where you went to primary school? How was your schooling life?
Yes, that's where I went to high school at École Primaire Save. Save is a sector, so my primary school was Save A.
Okay.
École Primaire Save A. It was not easy for parents, like affording school fees, affording basic needs for us.
Yeah.
So, and we were like free.
Yeah.
Me and my 2 brothers, we attended the same school. Ooh. And we were in the same year. Like if one is in P5, I have to be like all 3 children in the same year.
Yeah.
So we were in the same year till ordinary level. Yeah. So it was not easy for my parents. They said, we can't afford boarding schools. So you have to go to 9 years. Yeah. I know it will be easy for you. Yeah. And if you have certain dreams, you will achieve them.
Yeah.
I know I'm from this family, so I have to work hard. I have to work hard. We don't have where like we don't have enough like facilities. So I have to work hard as my education will lead me to becoming successful.
Yeah.
So I had to work hard, and I used to get the best marks comparing to my brothers.
Oh, wow. I was going to ask, and you were in the same year.
Yeah, we were in the same year.
Yeah.
So they were also intelligent, but I was the first among them. I was the best performer among them.
Yeah.
So I tried my best.
When you finished primary school, how did you perform?
I was in first grade.
Oh.
Yes, I was having a first grade.
Yeah.
Like they used to classify us in levels, so I was in the first level, let me say that. But parents were not able to afford my schooling, so they said, you, with your brothers, you have to go to 9 years. I said, it's okay. Even though I wanted to attend boarding school, nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So I had to go in 9 years.
Okay.
Education.
And is this 9 years, is that high school?
It's a high school. Like in high school, we attend 12 years. There is 3 years, which are like basic. After primary, we attend 3 years of education, which is general for everyone. It means the models that are taught are the same.
Okay.
So it was like a general education for us.
Okay.
Yes.
So you did the 3 years, and then after the 3 years, what happened?
After 3 years, during that 3 years,
Yeah.
they used to say, you are Atanas. What the secret do you use for getting that marks?
Yeah.
I said, nothing special. It's only working hard. It's only studying.
Yeah.
And even at home, I was not able to get time for revising my studies. So it means if I get a free time at school, that's when I use that time for revising. Because I know at home, I will not get time.
Yeah, because you'll be doing chores and helping.
Yes, and helping my parents.
Yeah.
Of course, as older girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during that ordinary level,
Yeah.
there came an announcement saying all girls who has this average of marks, they said who has like 65%.
Yeah.
Average marks from senior 1, senior 2, and senior 3.
Yeah.
They have to fill the forms. There have been forms, they say those forms are going to be filled based on this certain criteria.
Yeah.
I did not know what's going on. They
Yeah.
said, this is a FAWE Rwanda, they want to support girls,
Yeah.
and we know you are very blunt, so you have to fill the form.
Yeah.
I tried to fill it, but I was not sure if I could be selected.
Yeah.
I said, Jesus, am I going to be selected? Who am I to be selected?
Yeah.
So what's special about me? So I, with other 3 colleagues, we filled the form. It means we were all having those criteria. So I filled the form, but without confidence.
Atanasi's story is a reminder to never stop going for your dreams. My goodness. And if you watch this week's episode, she did attempt to teach me a few sciencey stuff in her lab. And I thought I grasped it. And then I was quizzed about what I learned a week after we were out of Musanze, and I couldn't remember a damn thing. But make sure you check out our East Africa tour and our adventures in Musanze and meeting Atanas. A link to that is in the show notes. Make sure you also subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be the first to watch all of the dope series that we're putting out for you. And of course, a big shout out to Mastercard Foundation and FAWE for being our partners in this tour. Another exciting thing that's happening, is this Saturday. I'm very excited about this because I have been very intentional about my finances for the past couple of years, and just kind of like understanding what my money personality is helped me so much, because we all don't have the same personalities, my goodness. And also understanding the emotions driving my financial habits. That made me understand so much, and just like made it easier for me to change the unhealthy habits, right? And it's always been my dream to not only start the year with a wellness talk around finances, but to end the year on one as well. And this year we've done that. And so we're going to end the year with my favorite personal finance coach and money educator, Susan Wanjiku. She was in the last 2 podcast episodes talking about some of the things she's going to be unpacking in the wellness talk. Listen to this.
As sisters, we said that we are going to be giving mommy 10,000, for example, so that she can host us over Christmas, etc. So maybe one of your sisters comes and she's like, maybe she's doing so well and she's like, this 10,000 doesn't do much. Now we have more kids. How about we start doing 40,000? A lot of us will not even have the courage to say, unfortunately, I can't do 40,000, right? It's the feeling that, oh, now they're gonna judge me, or they're gonna say this, or they're gonna say that, or I'm gonna be told that I'm not very cooperative, as you know, or maybe they even notice you have a new car and they're like, hey, since she bought a new car, why is this 40,000 a problem now? And the day people learn that there's absolutely no shame in saying, I cannot afford this, and say what you can. So for me, the trick has always been, I can't do 40, but I'm comfortable with 25. Will you guys take that? I don't think there's any problem with that. I don't think there's shame in saying, I can't do this, but I can be able to do this. So that part but I can be able to do. So be very open and honest about what you can do.
Yeah, so on the 16th of November, Susan is going to be helping us, plan our 2025 finances. Let's get a head start on that. She's going to talk about goal-based investing, creating financial boundaries, Christmas sinking funds, goodness, value-based financial planning, resetting, this is a good one, resetting after financial mistakes, and just so much more. We will close our ticket portal on Thursday because tickets are flying really fast, and we want to make sure that we don't have too many people. So you have 4 days left to grab your tickets. They're only 1,000 bob. You can grab your tickets right now on our website on Hustle Sasa. In the show notes, there's a link for you to go directly to where to grab your tickets. If you're a member of the family, would appreciate it if you share with the people around you, the people who you know would benefit from such a wellness talk. Share with them what we're up to and let them join the family. Let's jump into 100 African stories. I have really enjoyed this story. Not only is it pretty inspiring, but you know how you can just tell from even just someone's voice that they have good energy? Yeah, that's Benny. That's him for sure. And this is just part 1. Part 2 will be out next week. And his story will take us from Congo to Kenya and everything in between. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
I'm Benny. Most people know me as Chef Benny. I was born in DRC to a Congolese father and a Kenyan mom. I do have 2 mothers. You're going to hear me say mom or my mom. And it's going to be interesting because I may be referring to 2 different people. I think I'll clarify every time I say or which mom I'm referencing. I was born in Congo, in DRC, in Bukavu, but raised my entire life, at least from the age of 3, in Kenya. Interesting how I got here, but just to give you a little backstory. In DRC in 1996, we were getting a bit of the collateral damage or a spill-off from what was happening in Rwanda in 1994, 1995. I was born in a very small village across the border from Rwanda, and from between the month I was born in September and November, the militants from Rwanda had crossed the border, had been sent over just to quell any kind of uprisings that could have occurred from the people that were chased out in 1994 when the government finally took back power in Rwanda. Of course, as is an African story, when militants are given that kind of power, when the military is given that kind of power, they tend to abuse it, and they did abuse it when they crossed the border into Congo. So a lot of my family was affected. The village that I was born in was raided. We were chased out. A lot of people were killed. And as a result of that, my birth mother, as we were hiding, it was an interesting kind of situation. I think for me, it might sound like a unique story, but it's not very unique for a lot of the generation that was born in my time. We do have patches of little swells of times in our lives when we were experiencing this at the same time. And so my family was chased into the forest. And there's a time when the military did catch up, and once they did, they killed quite a lot of people from our village. As a result, my mother was one of the people that was shot. I was about a month old when my father finally did find us. My father and my older two brothers survived. They came and they found my mom and I. My mom wrapped around, with her arms wrapped around me. Bullet wounds through her, similar to the bullet wounds that I have. I have gunshot wounds on my face and on my right arm. I'll show you. It runs the way all the way down my arm. The one on my face is pretty obvious. I think it looks more like like I was a rowdy kid, like I was in a fight somewhere. But only when people ask what is that, then I can let them know a bit of a jarring story that it's actually a bullet wound. So she ideally saved my life, but lost hers in the process. So my father, that was a bit of a moment when I lost my connection to Kenya, but only to be reunited in a few more years. My father wrote a letter to his mother, my grandmother, who was living with my aunt at the time. So anytime I mention my mom again, I will be speaking about my aunt, because what then happened is she took me in. It took a couple of weeks for my grandmother to find where we were hiding in the forest. But when she did find us, I managed to bury my mom. And I was, how my grandmother explains it was that I was still breathing. But she promised my father that if I made it across the lake, across Lake Kivu, back to Goma, where she was with my aunt, or my mom, that she would keep me and take care of me, because they were mothers, and my aunt had a baby girl, my elder sister, so she did feel like she could take care of us quite well. But if I didn't make it across the lake, because it was a very long journey at the time with the war, if I didn't make it across the lake, she'd bring me back to be buried. I made it across the lake, clearly, so she kept me. They kept me for a couple of years, nursed me back to life. My mom tells me an interesting story about how it was a bit hard to find milk from lactating mothers at the time. There was a lot of lines and a lot of babies that had lost their parents. So the nursing homes were full of babies being nursed by only a few women. So what would happen is some of the male babies like me, they'd find cows that have just given birth. So we'd suckle right from there. That's intense, strong fresh calf milk that had a lot of nutrients. So that's the kind of nutrients that was keeping a lot of us alive. So that helped me. That brought me back to life. They did some patchwork surgeries, so that's why the scars are still so vivid and visible. But my hand is fine. My face is fine. I'm completely fine. And then she got married she was proposed to in 98. And the guy who she was marrying, who was coming to work with the UN in Kenya. So he was able to take his entire family. He came with 5 kids. She had 3 of her own, now plus me. So like the 9-10 of us all now came and moved together to Kenya, which was again my second connection back to Kenya. My brother stayed with my father. He was able to take care of them. The war had kind of subsided at the time. This was like 2 years later. I know they did have a conversation. I went back to Congo about quite a few years ago, maybe 12 years ago, just so I can get this story firsthand. And he told me that they stayed together with the kids. My mom wanted more time to bring me back to health, to make sure that I'm okay. She was also the only motherly presence that I had at the time. So my father did feel like a baby of that size should be taken care of by as many women as possible. So he let me stay there. By the time now they were coming to Kenya in 99, they had my mom and my birth father. Because now I guess I can get a bit confusing when I say my mom. I'm talking about, because my mom was already passed by this. She passed a month into my life. So anytime I say my mom, I'm talking about my aunt. So my mom and my birth father had a conversation. I hear it was a spicy conversation, but it was, my mom really wanted to keep me, and she managed to keep me. And that's how I came to Nairobi with her and her family. I was adopted in, and having Kenyan roots, it was easier for me to come back to Kenya with the rest of the family and just settle in here. And I stayed with her since, and interestingly was one of at least the more willing kids to assimilate into the Kenyan culture. We were taught English quite quickly. We grew up listening to a lot of French and Lingala and mother tongue. But once we got here, I think it was really important for my parents to make sure that we assimilate, we learn English, we get caught up with the Kenyan system. So we all went to the Kenyan schools. I did 844 primary school at Nairobi Pentecostal Church Academy, which is now CITAM, At the time it was NPC, Woodley. I really, really loved growing up here. I think I was a very typical quote-unquote foreigner, growing up always telling Kenyans they don't know how lucky they have it, realizing that I'm genuinely a Kenyan as well, but my roots don't allow me to at least accept that kind of connection so easily. Having lost people, so many people back in Congo, you tend to feel that is the family. Also having a family full of Congolese, you do tend to go back home to a very Congolese home. And when I go outside and I'm in school and I'm watching all of these Kenyans and really seeing that there's a big difference when you grow up in your home, when you grow up in your country, when you relate to everything that's going on politically, that's going on in the society. You relate to them so deeply because these are your people. When we go back home and watch Kenyan news, it's like we're watching another country, regardless of us being in the country. We'd watch things like the 2007, 2008 riots and we'd be like, it's tragic to see Kenyans go through something we went through and not realize just how much worse it can get. It's for the kind of poison that was going around, the kind of conversations people were having, attacking each other. I'd watch it, at least from my end, thinking I've experienced, people kill people for the same kind of ideologies, the same kind of lack of respecting humanity, the indignifiedness of making one tribe feel less than the other, or, poisoning each other against other tribes. I've seen it wipe out entire families and generations, and seeing Kenyans go through that in 2008, I think, was quite jarring for us, even as a Congolese family living here. So yeah, we assimilated. We grew up in Jamhuri, in Kilimani first for quite a while, although we 100% could not afford to grow up in Kilimani. So it was an even weirder experience living in a space where everyone around you has the money that you're supposed to have. Ideally, as a kid, you don't really know the difference between being in a much better, safer environment and not having what all your neighbors have. You don't see that as surviving or as thriving or as progressing in life. You just see that why can all my friends afford a PS5 and new shoes and toys and bicycles, and we're living in a family of 12 and the bare minimum is everyone's school fees is paid. Those kind of dynamics I think affected me a lot growing up, because you're being told to assimilate and to act like the other Kenyans and to live like them, but they are clearly, the ones that you're exposed to are clearly living a richer, wealthier life than you are. And only now that I've grown up can I realize just how much my parents were fighting to keep us here, but doing their best in a world that they did not understand. They did not, they were not used to, and they were struggling with their own life and marriage and trying to figure out how taking all these kids to Nairobi is something that, whether it's it's viable, it's functional, and there's no way to take us all back. And it's a very complex childhood that you don't get a lot of perspective on until you're older. So even when my parents did divorce in 2010, and then my mom now also in that same period of their divorce also got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, breast cancer. So she had to go to India as we were moving out from, like half the family is moving out from one big house we grew up in Kilimani to now a tiny apartment in Jamhuri, where it's now you're in Kenya. I don't know if that makes sense, where you're in Jamhuri, you're exposed to Kibera, you're exposed to Ayani, you're exposed to real, genuine Kenyanness. I think that's when I truly became a Kenyan. My time in Jamhuri really made me connected to what accepting your situation is like, what growing, what dreaming as a Kenyan is like, what understanding the opportunities that are available in Kenya are like. Because in Jamhuri, everyone is fighting to survive. Everyone is building something from nothing. There's no pretentious kind of world where your neighbor has gone to France for the holidays and is coming back with stories you will never ever experience before. You're living in a world where my financial situation looks like my neighbors. So if I see them working hard to thrive, selling clothes and opening biasharas for selling chips and doing the kind of things in the neighborhood that are allowing them to grow and to thrive, and you can see everyone fighting to survive the same way, then I start to realize that, oh yeah, Kenyans are just like us. Kenyans are us. We are Kenyan. We also want the same things. And for me to get those things, I can with the same kind of passion that I'm viewing in Jamhuri. Yeah, and that was now me through high school. I guess that's when I was starting to realize that this country is full of opportunities. I went to Aga Khan High School, still 844. I did my 844 there, KCSE. That also is also where I met my fiance. I mean, of course, we didn't start dating back then, but several years later we met, and we are now engaged to be married later on next month. But yeah, that was high school in Jamhuri, and then I graduated. I did okay, well enough for me to be accepted to do my dream career, which was veterinary medicine at the University of Nairobi. I was really excited to do that. So my whole life I thought I was going to be some kind of scientist. I was very, very curious. I did grow up very artistic. Like I could draw, I could play music, I could play piano, I could write scripts. But that creative side, when you grow up in the kind of life that I grew up in, is not very fostered. The things that are fostered are things that make sense. Like, do this and you'll be able to get a good job. Do this and you can get a good job in that, and do this so that you can be a professional in that. So art was not necessarily the things that we poured into, because you can't really see a path to surviving as an artist. So yeah, I made, from knowing that from a kid, I knew I needed money, so I don't grow up in the same kind of poverty that I grew up in. So I wanted to be a doctor, and I was because of the science side also works for me. I'm very curious. I'm very interested in that. And when I got accepted into UAN, I was very, very excited. And I went and I did it for about 2 years. And yeah, that was the end of my medicine trajectory. Only because as you know, in UAN, it takes 6 to 8 years to do a 4-year course. So during one of the bouts of teacher strikes or union strikes, whatever, I was left at home for like six months. We were supposed to go back. I think we stopped learning in March. We were supposed to go back in September, something like that. And during that time, I was at home in my mom's house, genuinely sitting with the realization that I do not like med school. I don't like the system. It was realizing how depressed I was, thinking about that being my life forever, like giving up on writing, giving up on being creative. I could see myself getting very, very depressed very quickly. And that kind of that time period during the strike didn't make things better, because you're broke, you have massive dreams, you want to be able to be a doctor at some point, but there's been so many strikes, nothing much is moving. You're realizing how you can't really mix medicine with creativity, with art. There's not much room for that. Every time I'm in med school, the only thing I can think about is med school, because if I'm not thinking about med school, I'm failing something in med school. It's a story of every med student, where if you take 5 minutes for yourself, you've taken 5 minutes off of your next exam. It's just you're always studying. And that strike period finally gave me a chance to direct some short films, write some stories. I really dove back into the arts, and stuck at home, broke, just watching cooking shows online, Bon Appetit, BuzzFeed, Munchies. I watched a lot of cooking shows online, and realizing something has changed. Very quickly realizing something has changed, because I think something I haven't mentioned was, by this time, because we were much older, a lot of my brothers and sisters, the ones that I left my father's house with, the ones that we divorced, when we divorced, half of us went with, are now all over the world. They've all flown out. They're in the States. Everyone's older, so they go where they want to go. So in my mom's house, it's just now me and my younger brother. And we had this caregiver that was the same caregiver that my mom got when she adopted me from my dad. Her name is Bettina. At the time she got me from my the time she was first hired when I was born. This is the time now after the incident, and my grandmother has taken me back to my mom's place to be taken care of. My mom had her at 18, so she was with us for 20 years exactly. So she left at 38. So this is now, I'm 20, I'm in uni. Or I was in uni, and then she left, and I was realizing very quickly that everything I know or love about food was her. She would cook all the time. For like the last 20 years of my life, she was the one who would cook. Even after we divorced, we went with her. She would cook incredible food. She took care of us so much. I really loved her. So now when she left and I'm alone in uni, I'm getting depressed. I'm realizing I'm also not eating well at all. And that's one of the things that really got me into watching food content online, because I knew what good food was, but I didn't know how to make it whatsoever. So watching food online and experimenting on like a small amount of things that I could collect would allow me to then start to view cooking as that kind of therapeutic, homey vibe that I was looking for. Because by this time, I've been on my own kind of with just my younger brother and a caregiver since high school. So we didn't necessarily have our parents around through the whole time. It's not something I don't know if I mentioned either, was as much as we all came here, at some point in our lives, I think I was in primary school, my parents both went back to work in Congo. So we're left here, we're 12 kids, and there's a lot of grown-up kids. So the grown-up kids are taking care of the younger kids because our parents are working in Congo. That's the kind of dynamic. So even when you divorce and leave that and kind of split that kind of a family, we've already been trained to kind of stay on our own. So our parents are not really worried about how we're going to take care of ourselves. We all understand it. Bills are paid first, food for the house is bought, and then you survive through the month. So that was throughout my high school. I'd come home and there's no one there. It's just me and my younger brother and the caregiver Bettina. We'd cook, take care of the house. That's it. So when I was now getting into uni, she left as well, because now I'm old. There's not much need for her anymore. My mom wants her back home so she can take care of stuff at home. So now there's no good food in the house as well. So I'm left at home. The teachers are striking. I'm trying my best to learn how to cook, how she would cook through the internet, and realizing this is another outlet. This is like drawing. It's like music. It's like writing, but this has a clear path to money. I think that kind of idea was from my childhood in Jamhuri, watching people turn their talents into money. I could see how food had been turned into money before. Someone opening a cheapo shop somewhere down there and it's taken their kid through uni. Because if you go to Jamhuri now, you'll see every community there has a restaurant. There's an Ethiopian restaurant, there's a Nigerian restaurant, there's a Congolese restaurant, there's Kenyan restaurant. It's insanely full of immigrants. You walk around Jamhuri and it's like a tourist attraction. There's different groups of people everywhere. And you can tell the Congolese people, they know each other there. The Rwandese people, they know each other there. And they tell each other that it's sort of a haven there. So even people who are immigrating into the country, they go and they stay there. So I watched those different immigrant groups fight to survive through their skills. Because when you come here, your papers don't mean anything. Your training doesn't mean anything. You don't have connections anymore. So you have to use what you have in your hands to survive. I watched that throughout my time in Jammu from class 7 to from 4. So even when I was learning how to cook, I was quickly realizing this is the same type of skill that these people have turned into money. So I don't have to feel like the only way that I can survive is med school. And once that realization settled in, I think it was like June 2018. By September, which was the time I was supposed to go back, I had already dropped out. I had told my mom I'm not going back. I had collected all the coins I had and borrowed some from my friends and said I was going to open a restaurant. This is within those 6 months of March to September. Because I needed a good, genuine excuse for leaving med school. You don't just leave med school to say, maybe I'll cook someday. And your mom's not here, you're living in her house, you have to go back with some very strong information, And I went back to her maybe like a week before school was about to open, and I told her I'm not going back next semester. Don't send money for school fees. She was upset, but extremely supportive. And I don't think I've told her before, but I don't think I've ever really sat with the idea that that's not how many mothers would be, because she was very honest with me. Like, her job, ideally for her job is done. Her job was to take me through school, to make sure that I'm okay, to raise me, to take care of me as much as possible. When I start making decisions like those on my own, from her perspective, I'm out here on my own, because she was happy and willing to continue to sacrifice as much as possible, because even uni is a sacrifice for her. It's a lot of money. She was happy to continue to sacrifice to take me through uni, but not to pour into things that she does not. She was not the origin of. She was not. These are my things. If I'm making decisions on how my own life is going to go, then that's up to me to sustain and to figure out and to grow. So I can stay in her house. That's fine. But she, up to that point there now, she's not funding any of my ideas, because now I have to prove myself. And I knew that was going to happen, which is why I already needed to have a proper, solid, that's what the restaurant idea was. Yeah, I think now that's around now uni, well, once I'm dropping out and deciding I'm going to pull through this restaurant thing on my own, now having absolutely no idea what I'm doing, not having done the proper research, not having created a team, just really running away from med school, looking for as big an excuse as possible. And of course, it failed horribly. It failed several times. The first time it failed was maybe 6 months after dropping out, just after starting it, because the location that I found a partner when we were going to combine and pay for some really big location on Kilimani, and we were so excited, and they had promised us that the location would be ready by beginning of October, and it was not ready until the next year, August. So that's almost 10 months there, and it only took us maybe 4 months. So like the next year, February, we had to shut down. No one was coming to the location. We had already spent so much money. I had hired people. All the little coins that I had put together were just dwindling away, and I had no sense of direction as to what I'm doing. So I held on to the space waiting for them to open until they never did, and ran out of money and had to shut down. I didn't give up, because again, I had already given up on med school. So I just went from Adams Arcade down to near Uchumi Hyper, and across the road, a friend of mine had one of those maisonettes that they were leasing out different parts of the houses, so as offices. I think if you go through Kilimani or the old Kilimani now, you'd realize a lot of these houses that were there before are not being used as houses anymore. They're office blocks now. So you go to an estate that's full of just homes. You think they're homes, but someone owns one room and it's an office of theirs. Someone owns another room. So I talked to him about the kitchen. I wanted the kitchen of that house as my HQ, so that I could then sell food to the offices around there. So that was the idea that I had, which was a good idea, generally a good idea. But of course, we have no business acumen. You're still going to struggle. And I had no money whatsoever. So I didn't even have money to pay him for rent. I just wanted to start so that I could sell some throughout the month and then pay him for rent. So I created a lot of debts while I was there, just trying to fight and trying to survive. And it was getting to a point where I think I did it for almost a year, like February all the way down till the next year, March, because as things are starting to slowly pick up, COVID. So COVID happens and all of those offices go home. So now I'm in a space, yeah, sure, but there's no office to feed whatsoever for months. Everyone's gone home and I was already broke. So of course it's just, you shut down a second time.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless. I really can't wait for you to hear part 2 of Benny's story. It involves a famous Hollywood actress. That's all I can say. In the meantime, in the show notes, there's a link to Benny's socials if you want to connect with him, which I think you really should. I want to tell you more about what he's doing, but then it's going to be a spoiler for part 2. So I'll just wait until next week when part 2 comes your way and we can chit chat about it, right? If you're in the greater East Africa region, you want to catch this podcast on Trace Radio, head over to traceradio.co.ke. We're there every single Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. and 11 p.m. Fridays, we're there at 1 p.m. If you want to share your story on the podcast, fill out our storyteller form. A link to it is in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, which I hope you did because I really did as well, drop us a comment, give us 5 stars, and don't forget to share it with your people. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.
I'm Lupita Nyong'o. My new podcast, Mind Your Own, is a storytelling show that navigates what it means to belong, all from the African perspective. We're going beyond the headlines to dive into nuanced, intimate stories from Africans around the world. I'm so excited to bring this show to you. Listen to Mind Your Own on Apple Music.